Elliot, you have a visitor. My mother's voice drifted from the kitchen, muffled by the walls of my small apartment. I barely registered the words as I flipped through a pile of papers on my desk, trying to make sense of a sea of numbers. Another day, another batch of overdue invoices. The rhythm of my life was as predictable as the ticking of the old wall clock. I looked up, blinking away the monotony, and caught the familiar shuffle of my mother's slippers in the hallway. "Who is it?" I called out, my curiosity piqued. It was a rarity for someone to visit without prior notice, and my days usually consisted of work and the occasional visit from my mother. "Someone from your past," she said, her voice tinged with uncertainty. I frowned, the mention of my past bringing back memories I would rather leave undisturbed. The doorbell rang, cutting through my thoughts. My heart skipped a beat. I wasn't expecting anyone, let alone someone from a time I'd carefully put behind me. I walked to the door, my steps slow and deliberate, the familiar creak of the floorboards echoing in the quiet apartment. When I opened the door, the sight before me was like a punch to the gut. There she was, Samantha, my ex-wife. Time had not been kind to her, she looked older, wearier, but unmistakably the same woman I had once shared my life with. And next to her, clutching her hand, was a young boy, his wide eyes darting between me and the strange surroundings. "Elliot," Samantha said, her voice a mix of hesitation and hope. "It's been a long time." I stood there, stunned, trying to process the sight of her. The last time I had seen Samantha, she had walked out on our family, leaving me to pick up the shattered pieces of our lives. Anger and confusion boiled inside me, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice strained. Samantha's face fell, and she took a deep breath before speaking. "I know this is unexpected, but I need to explain. This is Daniel," she said, gesturing to the boy beside her. "He's my son. I know it's been years, and Your son?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "You show up out of nowhere with another man's child and expect me to just accept this? After everything that happened?" The boy's eyes widened, and he clung tighter to Samantha's hand. I could see the fear in his gaze, a reflection of the confusion I felt. Samantha's eyes filled with tears as she looked at me, pleading. "Please, Elliot, just hear me out," she said softly. "I made mistakes, but I want to make things right. I want us to be a family again." The request hung in the air, absurd and impossible. I remembered the countless nights spent worrying about our children's future after Samantha's departure. The pain of her leaving, the struggle of raising our kids alone, the emptiness of her absence, it all came flooding back. "Why now?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm raging within me. "Why did you come here after all these years?" Samantha shifted uncomfortably, her gaze dropping to the floor. "I've been trying to find you for a long time," she said. "I made a lot of mistakes, but I want to make amends. I want Daniel to know his family, and I want to be part of your lives again." I shook my head in disbelief. "Do you have any idea how much you've hurt us? How much you've ruined our lives? You can't just waltz back in and expect everything to be okay." Samantha's eyes filled with desperation. "I know I can't undo the past, but I'm asking for a chance. Please, just let me explain." The boy, Daniel, looked up at me with wide, innocent eyes. It was clear he didn't understand the full gravity of the situation, but he could sense the tension. I felt a pang of sympathy for him, but my anger and betrayal were overwhelming. "I don't know what to say," I said, struggling to keep my composure. "This is too much to process right now. I need you to leave." Samantha's face fell, and she squeezed Daniel's hand. "I understand," she said quietly. "We'll go. But please, think about what I've said." Before I could respond, Samantha turned and walked away, Daniel following close behind. I watched them go, the door closing with a resounding thud that seemed to echo in the silence of my apartment. The weight of the encounter settled heavily on my shoulders, and I slumped against the door, staring at the empty hallway. My mother appeared behind me, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. "I don't know," I replied, my voice trembling. "I just don't know." As I closed my eyes, trying to chase away the haunting memories, I knew that Samantha's return had opened a door that was better left shut. But now that it was open, I had no idea what lay beyond. The night stretched long and restless. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the shadows from the streetlights filtering through the blinds. Every creak and groan of the apartment seemed to magnify the chaos inside my head. Memories of Samantha and our life together looped endlessly, each recollection tinged with pain and regret. "Dad?" My daughter, Emily, was standing in the doorway of my room. Her sleep-rumpled hair and sleepy eyes were a stark contrast to the turmoil in my heart. I heard a noise. "Are you okay?" I sat up, forcing a reassuring smile. "I'm fine," Sweetheart. Just had a rough day. Emily padded over and climbed onto the bed, curling up beside me. Her presence was a balm to my wounded soul, a reminder of the family I had fought so hard to protect. I ran my fingers through her hair, trying to focus on the here and now. Was it Mom? Emily asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated, my mind racing. Yes, it was, I finally admitted. She came by with a boy. She wants to be part of our lives again. Emily's eyes widened. A boy? Who is he? Her son, I said, my voice cracking. She wants us to be a family again. Emily was quiet for a moment, processing the information. What did you say? I told her to leave, I said, my heart heavy. I don't know how to deal with this. It's too much, too suddenly. Emily nodded slowly, her small hand gripping mine. Do you think we'll ever see her again? I don't know, I said honestly. I hope not, but I can't predict the future. The silence between us was thick with unspoken emotions. I wished I could protect Emily from all the pain and confusion, but life had a way of thrusting us into situations we weren't ready for. Dad? Emily's voice broke the silence. Are you going to be okay? I looked at her, my heart aching. I will be. I promise. The next morning was a blur of routine, breakfast, school drop-offs, work. My mind was preoccupied with the events of the previous day, unable to focus fully on anything else. The mundane tasks of daily life felt inconsequential compared to the weight of what had happened. At work, I tried to bury myself in spreadsheets and financial reports, hoping to escape the emotional turmoil. But my concentration was shattered every time I thought of Samantha and the mess she had reintroduced into my life. I needed a distraction, and when my coworker, Greg, dropped by my office, I welcomed the interruption. Hey, Elliot, Greg said, leaning against the doorframe. You look like you've seen a ghost. Everything all right? I sighed, rubbing my temples. Not really. My ex-wife showed up yesterday with a kid she claims is hers. She wants to reconcile and be a family again. Greg's eyebrows shot up. Whoa. That's a lot to handle. What are you going to do? I don't know, I admitted. I slammed the door in her face. I'm not sure what else to say. Greg nodded sympathetically. Well, you're not alone in this. If you need to talk or anything, I'm here. I appreciated the offer, though I wasn't sure how much Greg could really help. My emotions were a tangled mess, and I struggled to articulate them even to myself. I forced a smile, grateful for the support but feeling more isolated than ever. The day dragged on, each hour feeling like an eternity. When I finally returned home, I found Emily sitting at the kitchen table, working on her homework. Her focus was admirable, but I could tell she was still affected by the previous day's events. Hey, Em, I said, trying to sound upbeat. How was school? It was okay, she said, not looking up from her books. I had a math test. I think I did well. That's great to hear, I said, taking a seat across from her. Do you want to talk about anything? How are you feeling about everything? Emily hesitated, her pencil pausing midair. I don't really know. It's just weird, you know? I thought we were doing fine. Now it's like everything's changed. I know, I said, reaching out to touch her hand. It feels like everything's been turned upside down. But we'll get through it, okay? Emily nodded, her eyes reflecting the uncertainty I felt. Okay. As the evening wore on, I tried to distract myself with chores and tidying up the apartment. I needed to create a sense of normalcy, both for Emily and for myself. But every corner of the apartment seemed to echo with the memories of Samantha and the life we had once shared. Late that night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling of impending change. Samantha's return had opened a door I had hoped would remain closed forever. But now that it was ajar, I knew it would take all my strength to navigate whatever lay ahead. The days following Samantha's unexpected visit felt like a whirlwind. My routine, once a comforting refuge, now seemed fraught with reminders of the past. Each morning I woke up with the same knot in my stomach, the lingering echoes of Samantha's plea for reconciliation haunting me as I went through my daily tasks. At work, I found myself distracted, unable to focus on the numbers and spreadsheets that usually consumed my attention. My mind kept drifting back to the scene at the door, the way Samantha had looked so vulnerable, and the small, frightened boy who had clung to her hand. I couldn't shake the image of him from my thoughts. Who was he, really? What had he endured? And what did Samantha expect from me? One particularly slow afternoon, Greg stopped by my office again, a concerned look on his face. You've been a ghost these past few days, he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. You want to talk about it? I sighed, rubbing my forehead. I don't even know where to start. Everything's been turned upside down. Samantha shows up with this kid and expects us to just pick up where we left off. Greg leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. It's a lot to process. Have you talked to her again, or figured out what her plans are? I shook my head. No. I haven't even seen her since that day. Part of me wants to understand why she's back, but another part of me just wants to avoid the whole situation. Greg nodded sympathetically. It's normal to feel conflicted. It might help to talk things through with her directly. You need to know what her intentions are and what this means for you and your family. I suppose you're right, I admitted. I just don't know if I'm ready to face her again. Just remember, whatever you decide, you're doing what's best for yourself and your family, Greg said. You don't have to make any decisions right away. That evening, I found myself pacing around the living room, my thoughts racing. Emily was at her friend's house, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The silence was almost deafening, a stark contrast to the emotional storm I was weathering. Just as I was about to pick up the phone to call Samantha, it rang, jolting me out of my reverie. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number, but something made me answer. Hello? Elliot? The voice on the other end was tentative, almost nervous. It's Samantha. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my emotions. Yes, Samantha. What do you want? I wanted to explain things a bit more, she said, her voice trembling. I understand if you're angry, but I need you to hear me out. Fine, I said, my patience wearing thin. I'm listening. I know it's been years, Samantha began, and I can't change the past. But I've been trying to make amends for a long time. Daniel, he's my son, yes. I'm not asking you to be a father to him or anything. I just want him to know his family. Why now? I asked. Why after all this time? Samantha's silence was heavy, and when she spoke again, her voice was choked with emotion. I made a lot of mistakes. I've been trying to find a way to make things right, but I didn't know how. I've been struggling, and I thought maybe coming here would be a start. So you just show up on my doorstep and expect everything to be okay? I said, my frustration evident. What about the damage you've done? The years of pain and struggle we've endured? I'm not expecting things to be okay overnight, Samantha said. I know it's a lot to ask. I just want a chance to explain myself and maybe, if you're willing, to start rebuilding. Her words hung in the air, a fragile bridge between the past and the present. I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me, the weight of the conversation and the emotional turmoil it stirred up taking their toll. Okay, I said finally. Let's meet. We need to talk in person. Thank you, Samantha said, relief evident in her voice. I'll be there tomorrow. We can meet at the cafe down the street, if that's okay. It's fine, I said, trying to sound more composed than I felt. I'll see you there. After the call ended, I sat in silence, the enormity of the decision weighing heavily on me. Meeting Samantha again meant reopening old wounds, confronting the past, and facing a future that felt uncertain and fraught with emotional risk. Emily's return later that evening brought some comfort, a reminder of the normalcy I craved. We spent the evening together, talking about her day and watching her favorite movie. For a brief moment, the tension eased, and I felt like a father again, focused on the present rather than the complexities of my past. As I tucked Emily into bed, I found myself dreading the meeting with Samantha but also feeling a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way to navigate this difficult situation and find some semblance of resolution. But for now, all I could do was face the coming day and hope for clarity amidst the storm. The next morning dawned gray and overcast, a reflection of my mood as I prepared for the meeting with Samantha. The anticipation gnawed at my nerves, and I found myself second-guessing every decision I had made in the past week. The cafe where we had agreed to meet was a small, unassuming place down the street from my apartment, a spot that had once been a favorite of ours when Samantha and I were still together. The familiarity of the place was both comforting and unsettling. As I walked to the cafe, I tried to steady my thoughts, reminding myself of why I had agreed to this meeting. I needed answers. I needed to understand why Samantha had reappeared in my life and what her intentions were. But no matter how much I prepared, I couldn't shake the feeling of apprehension that weighed on me. The cafe's bell chimed as I entered, and I scanned the room for Samantha. She was already there, sitting at a corner table by the window, her gaze fixed on the door. As soon as she saw me, she stood up, her face a mixture of anxiety and relief. Elliot, she said, her voice barely audible over the hum of the cafe. Thank you for coming. I nodded, trying to maintain a semblance of composure. Let's sit. We settled into our seats, the small table between us feeling like a chasm that couldn't be crossed easily. I could see that Samantha had changed since we last saw each other, her face was lined with the marks of hardship and regret. But despite her appearance, there was a determination in her eyes that I couldn't ignore. I'm sorry for showing up the way I did, Samantha began, breaking the silence. I should have reached out differently. I didn't mean to shock you. I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms. Then why did you come back? After all these years, what made you think it was okay to just walk back into our lives? Samantha took a deep breath, her hands fidgeting with the edge of her napkin. I've been trying to figure out how to make things right. I've made so many mistakes, Elliot. I know I can't undo the past, but I wanted to explain and see if there was any chance of rebuilding. Rebuilding? I echoed, a note of incredulity in my voice. How do you expect us to just rebuild after everything you've done? You walked out on our family. You left me to handle everything alone. I know, Samantha said, tears welling up in her eyes. And I'm truly sorry. I was selfish and irresponsible. I should have faced the consequences of my actions, but I was afraid and didn't know how to come back. I looked away, my heart heavy. The anger I felt was still fresh, but it was tempered by a pang of sympathy for the woman who had once been my partner. What about Daniel? I asked. What's his story? Samantha's eyes softened as she spoke about the boy. Daniel is my son with a man I was involved with after leaving you. He's 8 years old, and he doesn't know much about his past. I wanted him to have some connection to his family, even if it's just a small one. I took a moment to process this new information. The idea of another child, another piece of our broken past, was overwhelming. What do you want from me? I asked finally. What is it that you're hoping to achieve by coming here? Samantha looked down at her coffee cup, her voice barely a whisper. I don't expect you to accept us back into your life immediately. I just wanted to explain and maybe, if possible, start making amends. I want Daniel to know he has a family, and I want you to understand that I'm trying to make things right. I was silent for a long moment, weighing her words against the hurt and confusion I had felt for years. I don't know if I can just forgive and forget, I said finally. It's not just about you and me anymore. It's about Emily too. She's been through so much, and I have to protect her first and foremost. Samantha nodded, her expression one of resignation. I understand. I'm not asking for immediate forgiveness. I just wanted to be honest with you and give you a chance to know my side of the story. The conversation drifted into more personal territory, with Samantha sharing details about her life since leaving. She spoke of struggles, of the challenges she had faced, and of her attempts to find stability for herself and Daniel. I listened, my emotions a tangled mess of empathy and skepticism. As we neared the end of our meeting, Samantha's voice was soft but firm. I don't want to impose on you. I'll respect your decision, whatever it may be. I just wanted you to know that I'm here and that I'm willing to work towards something better. I looked at her, the weight of the past heavy on my shoulders. I need time to think, I said. This is a lot to process, and I have to consider what's best for Emily and myself. Samantha nodded, standing up as I did. Thank you for meeting with me, Elliot. I appreciate it. As I watched her leave the cafe, I felt a sense of closure, but also an understanding that the path forward would be complicated. I had hoped for clarity, but instead, I found myself more conflicted than ever. Returning home, I found Emily waiting for me with a curious expression. How did it go? She asked, her eyes searching mine. I managed a tired smile. It was a long conversation. We talked about a lot of things. But for now, we're okay. Emily nodded, accepting my response without pressing further. As we settled in for the evening, I knew that the days ahead would be filled with difficult decisions and emotional challenges. But as long as I had Emily by my side, I felt a glimmer of hope that we could navigate the storm together.